Hey guys, tonight we're starting with something sweet, something crunchy, and something completely unexpected. The story of how a wine-loving, toga-wearing Greek god may have accidentally created one of humanity's greatest pleasures: theater snacks. That's right, forget modern popcorn. We're talking olives tossed mid-monologue, honey cakes eaten in total silence, and a chorus that may or may not have been bribed with fig tarts. And if that doesn't already sound like the kind of history lesson that comes with a side of crumbs, then buckle up, because Dionysus isn't done with you yet. You're about to step into a world where divine madness met mid-show munchies, where tragedies made you cry, and also crave goat cheese, and where a thunderous ovation sometimes had less to do with the performance and more to do with a particularly well-timed apricot. You probably wouldn't survive a single act without snacks. Good thing they were invented. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Are you mid-nap? Midnight? Tuesday afternoon pretending to be Thursday? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start by picturing it. A steep hill somewhere in ancient Athens, just before dawn. The air is cool and sharp with the smell of wine-soaked wood and overripe olives. The earth beneath your sandals still holds the memory of last night's dancing, and standing at the edge of a clearing surrounded by carts, donkeys, and half-assembled tent cloths is a theater. Not marble, not polished, not even finished yet, honestly, but it's sacred. Because this patch of dirt and dust belongs to Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and, as the Athenians are slowly discovering, entertainment. Of course, he never meant to create theater. Dionysus, to put it gently, had a habit of stumbling into greatness while chasing other goals entirely. One minute he's promoting grape fermentation, the next he's inspiring group choreography and poetry contests that involve yelling at goats. Yes, goats, that's important. You wander closer, past a group of priests arguing about fig arrangements, and take a seat, or rather a smooth patch of grass shaped vaguely like a bench. You're just one of many. Citizens, farmers, poets, pickpockets, all gathering for the Dionysia festival. Everyone's talking, not about the play, about what they brought to eat. You hear someone behind you boasting about his salted fish strips, from the coast, mind you, not the market. To your left, a woman's unwrapping a bundle of honey-roasted barley. A child nearby is quietly gnawing on, is that a whole onion? Yes, it is. No one's judging. Because in ancient Athens, going to the theater was a whole-day affair. You didn't just show up for a performance. You packed for survival. There were no snack bars, no ticket stubs, just you, your neighbors, the gods, and whatever you thought to stuff in your satchel. And while the priests and playwrights intended this to be a spiritual experience, a celebration of sacred ritual, community, catharsis, and cosmic balance, let's be honest, if you forgot your figs, you were going to regret it. So as the first chorus steps out in their oversized masks, reciting odes to suffering and fate, you're already peeling a grape with your fingernail, trying not to crunch too loudly. And it's here, in this exact moment, under a rising sun, with tragedy echoing off the stones and a mouthful of goat cheese, that you realize something is changing. Theater isn't just an offering to the gods anymore. It's a place where people eat and feel at the same time. Tomorrow, you'll follow Dionysus into the vineyard that became a stage. But tonight, you lean back against the warm earth, take another bite of your honey cake, and try to focus on the actor currently crying about a lost sibling, while a bee tries to land on your barley. You're not sure what's more dramatic, the monologue or the snack that's melting in your hand. The actor wails. The chorus moans. Somewhere nearby, someone is definitely peeling an egg. You try to focus on the unfolding tragedy, a son banished, a city in peril, a moral dilemma no one asked for. But the sun's getting hotter, the wine fumes are settling in, and honestly, you're starting to think more about lunch than destiny. And you're not alone, because before popcorn, before interval ice cream, and long before plastic-wrapped nachos, there was something deeply human and deeply Athenian about bringing a full meal to the theater. This is the world before snacks had rules, before silence was enforced, and before ushers told you to please finish that outside. In 5th century BCE Athens, the open-air theater was half sacred ground, half picnic zone, and entirely communal. You glance around, someone's chewing olives directly off a skewer. A pair of older men are sharing salted anchovies wrapped in fig leaves. Their breath could start a war. A woman unwraps a flat cake pressed with sesame and honey, and the kid next to her immediately starts negotiating in grapes. You reach into your own pouch, carefully sewn with an extra compartment for sticky things, and retrieve the most trusted theater snack of them all: cured fish jerky. Tough, chewy, nearly indestructible, perfect for long performances and moral ambiguity. You tear off a bite as the chorus transitions to the next act. A masked actor spins dramatically, gesturing toward Mount Olympus, and you hear someone behind you mutter, "He overacted last year too." Same speech, less cheese. Because here's the thing, the play mattered, of course it did, but it was only half the experience. The rest? Food, commentary, fellowship. The theater wasn't just entertainment. It was a civic duty. People were expected to attend, seats were sponsored, attendance was recorded, even prisoners were released temporarily to watch the festival. And when you're obligated to sit in the sun for 6 hours straight, you better believe you're bringing snacks. There's some debate among historians about what exactly was eaten. Written records are vague. No Athenian playwright ever paused mid-tragedy to describe a cheese plate. But excavations near old theater sites have uncovered cracked olive pits, bread crusts, fig stems, fish bones, and mysteriously a ceramic dish shaped like a turtle. Still unclear. One theory: snacks were currency. Not literal coin, but a kind of social currency. Offer someone a bite of your honey cake and you've made an ally. Refuse to share your almonds, you're a villain worse than any character on stage. Some say the birth of the intermission came not from staging needs, but from snack logistics. One poorly documented play had to pause when a group of teenagers spilled an entire basket of pomegranates across the front row. The resulting slip and fall incident required 2 priests and a very long broom. But back to Dionysus. He wasn't just the god of wine. He was the god of boundaries breaking down, between madness and order, joy and sorrow, performance and life. So maybe it makes perfect sense that under his watchful and probably slightly tipsy eye, food and theater merged. Tomorrow you'll explore the accidental vineyard theater, where early performances grew between rows of grapes and audience members may have been both tipsy and involved. But for now, you finish your fish jerky, lean back, and watch as the next actor enters, sword drawn, eyes wild with emotion. He's about to deliver a monologue about fate and betrayal. You, meanwhile, are wondering if anyone nearby brought figs. Spoiler, they did. And you're about to trade your last barley biscuit for 2. You trade the biscuit for the figs. A fair deal, honestly. The figs are sun-warmed and sticky sweet, their skin slightly wrinkled, their insides glowing like sunset. You bite into one just as the actor begins screaming at the sky. It's a powerful moment. He's mourning, you're chewing, and somehow both things feel equally sacred. Because here, in the theater of ancient Athens, before stages were raised, before curtains existed, and long before anyone worried about acoustics, everything started in a vineyard. Yes, a vineyard. Not a marble hall, not a polished plaza, just a sloping hillside overgrown with vines and half-stomped grape skins, with a crude wooden altar to Dionysus in the middle, and a whole lot of very loud people gathered around it. This wasn't where people watched plays. It's where the idea of theater, of ritualized storytelling for a crowd, first took root. And it happened among the grapes. You can almost see it now. Farmers pressing wine in the morning, priests offering garlands to the god, chorus members warming up their voices beside barrels, and someone, always someone, arranging baskets of bread, olives, and dried herbs for the attendees. The early Dionysian festivals weren't seated, they were surrounded. You didn't observe the drama from afar. You stood among it. There was no fourth wall, no neat row of benches, just a swirl of sound and scent. Thyme crushed underfoot. Roasted onions passed from hand to hand. Laughter too loud, weeping too close. And maybe a goat walking across the stage because no one stopped it. Some scholars believe the very first actors were just priests, slightly more dramatic than usual, reenacting wine myths to amuse the crowd. The The audience would cheer, jeer, offer food, or even step in to shout their own version of events. This was not subtle art. This was participation. You think about that as you suck fig from your fingers. The sweetness lingers and the breeze smells faintly of dust and time. A boy next to you, no older than 10, turns and says, "My uncle once sneezed so loud during a death scene they had to restart the whole play." You nod solemnly. Seems accurate. The truth is, the first theaters weren't built to separate actor and audience. They were meant to blend them. To let everyone experience a shared story in shared space while sharing snacks. Eventually, stone benches were carved, theaters were formalized, stages were raised. But before all that was you, the earth, the god, and the figs. Tomorrow, you'll discover how masks, drama, and midday feasts created accidental intermissions, moments when the performance paused and the eating peaked. But for now, you rest your back against a sun-warmed rock, take one last fig from your neighbor, and watch the actor begin his final plea. He's sweaty. He's shouting. You are not. You are full. And isn't that a kind of theater too? The actor falls to his knees, crying out to the gods, arms raised, robes swirling, voice echoing all the way up the hill. It's intense. It's raw. It's definitely the third time he's died this week. You, meanwhile, are focused on the sesame seeds stuck to your teeth. Because while tragedy stirs the soul, honey cake stirs something deeper. The chorus takes over now, 15 masked men moving in practiced lines, their sandals scuffing the dusty earth, chanting something poetic and difficult about fate, justice, and someone's mother-in-law. You chew slowly, sweet, nutty, crumbly, and you realize this is lunch. Not metaphorical lunch, actual lunch. Because Greek theater didn't happen at night, it happened in the middle of the day. Under the sun, for hours, sometimes for days, and the human body, as you've no doubt discovered by now, has needs. Thus, midday feasts. And oh, did the Athenians deliver. Wrapped in linen, carried in baskets, tucked under cloaks, hidden inside hollow walking sticks, the audience came prepared. Bread soaked in oil, dates stuffed with crushed almonds, slices of cold roasted lamb, if you were lucky, garlic, so much garlic. And of course, wine. Always wine. Watered down, but strong enough that by the second act, someone in the third row was guaranteed to start arguing with the chorus. It wasn't just a meal. It was a ritual. And like all rituals, it had rules. Unspoken ones, sure, but everyone seemed to know them. Don't unwrap anything crunchy during a death scene. Don't drink so much that you heckle the gods. Always offer a bite of your cake to someone weeping nearby. Tragedy etiquette. Some records suggest entire group meals happened between acts. Theaters weren't just places for performance, they were communal dining halls under the open sky. One particularly famous production had a 15-minute pause due to a goat escaping from backstage and eating someone's lentil pie. The goat was not punished, it was considered part of the experience. Even the actors participated. Chorus members would sometimes snack behind their masks during long speeches. Lead performers were known to slip sips of wine mid-monologue. Aeschylus himself may have written entire scenes just to justify a food break. And Dionysus? Well, let's just say he approved. The god of wine, pleasure, and complete lack of boundaries wasn't about to draw a hard line between drama and dining. If anything, he encouraged it. Some say he even appeared, in disguise of course, at these performances, sitting among the crowd, eating sesame cakes, laughing too loudly, and applauding at the wrong time just to confuse people. The masks didn't help. Anyone could be Dionysus, even you. Tomorrow, you'll meet a chorus who ruined their performance by eating too much during rehearsal. A cautionary tale if ever there was one. But tonight, you finish your cake, you brush the crumbs from your lap, and you watch the sun climb higher, wondering if it's possible to die nobly on stage and have a good lunch break in between. Spoiler, in Athens, it's not just possible, it's expected. The sun's nearly overhead now, too high to ignore, too hot to pretend you're comfortable. The actors are sweating, the audience is shifting on their mats, even the olives in your pouch look exhausted. The chorus shuffles forward for the next ode, moving in that slow, sweeping pattern of sandaled feet and synchronized hand gestures. They chant in unison, masks forward, arms raised to the heavens. And then, a pause. A long one. Someone coughs. Someone else hiccups. And then, unmistakably, a loud stomach gurgle echoes from the second row of the chorus. The entire crowd hears it. The leader of the chorus lowers his arms. One of the others stumbles slightly, clutching his middle. You recognize the signs. They ate too much. Welcome to the legendary and very real cautionary tale of the chorus that ate too much. Here's what happened. Earlier that morning, while the audience was still arriving, the chorus members, all 15 of them, young, athletic, and very sure of themselves, were gifted a large tray of festival honey cakes by an admiring fan. These weren't just any cakes. They were layered, dusted with sesame, stuffed with dates, still warm. The chorus knew they weren't supposed to eat heavily before performing. But who says no to free cake? They didn't just eat them. They devoured them. And now, midway through a climactic choral interlude, they're deeply regretting their choices. You watch as one chorus member falters during a spin, nearly colliding with the priest's seat. Another sings slightly offbeat, distracted by what is clearly indigestion. The crowd tries to stay respectful, but the mood shifts. A few polite chuckles. One guy outright whispers, "They're full of more drama than the play." And the worst part? The lead actor has no idea. He's still pacing dramatically, waving his arms, delivering a monologue about betrayal and fate, while behind him, his chorus is doing everything short of lying down. Eventually, a discreet bell chimes. The director calls an unscheduled pause. Officially, it's due to heat. Unofficially, emergency digestion break. You lean back and sip a bit of watered wine. This isn't the first time this has happened, of course. Snacking, as you've now come to understand, is woven into the theater experience. But like all pleasures, it comes with limits. Too many figs, you doze during the love confession. Too much cheese, you miss your cue and burp during a funeral dirge. Too many honey cakes, you become part of a very embarrassing footnote in dramatic history. Some scholars believe this incident sparked the very first version of a green room, a designated backstage space where performers could rest and digest without collapsing mid-chorus. Others say it was just a lesson from Dionysus himself. All things in balance. Except wine. That's sacred. You jot a mental note. Snack modestly, sing clearly, avoid date stuffing before dancing. Tomorrow, you'll explore the humble olive pit, both a popular snack and a surprisingly aggressive form of theater critique. But for now, the chorus returns. Faces paler, steps smaller, eyes glazed like the cakes they now fear. And you, well-fed, well-seated, and deeply entertained, settle in for Act 2, silently thanking your past self for packing light. The actor is mid-soliloquy, passionately begging the gods for justice, when a tiny object arcs through the air, spinning gracefully, almost poetically, and lands near his sandal with a soft thock. An olive pit. The crowd doesn't gasp. No one panics. In fact, the actor doesn't even flinch. He pauses, steps casually aside, and continues his line, with a slight emphasis as if to say, "Nice throw, but I've seen worse." Because in ancient Greek theater, olive pits weren't just food waste. They were feedback. You glance around. A few audience members are still snacking on marinated olives wrapped in grape leaves, discreetly tucking pits into folds of cloth or spitting them into palm-sized bowls. But one man, wearing a tunic with the smug energy of someone who's seen every production this year, has a small pile of olive pits on a flat stone beside him. He's ready, and he's judging. Olive pits were the original rotten tomatoes, a harmless, edible, easily disposable way for the audience to express their displeasure with the performance. Bad monologue? Plick. Olive pit. Overacted death scene? Thock. Olive pit to the stage. Forgot your line? Oh dear, that's a double pit situation. But it wasn't all spite. Some pit throwers were subtle artists. They aimed for precision, not to hurt, but to signal. A pit at the actor's feet was a warning. A pit at the backdrop? You're boring us. A pit at the priest's seat? Bold, possibly illegal. There are stories of particularly bad productions where the stage was so littered with pits that the actors had to deliver their final scene in barefoot minefield mode. One chorus leader, determined not to slip, turned it into an interpretive dance. He wasn't invited back. But the olive pit wasn't just a heckler's tool, it was also a snack staple. Salty, briny, carried in small woven pouches or ceramic bowls, olives were easy to transport and even easier to share. Some theatergoers kept track of the number of pits they spit out, using them as a time marker. 3 pits into this speech and still no plot twist. 5 pits. We get it. Your mother's cursed. A few enterprising vendors even sold pre-scored olives, easier to eat quietly, less risk of airborne critiques. Of course, not everyone approved. A pamphlet, yes, really, once circulated declaring olive pit throwing to be a sign of disrespect towards sacred art and sacred footwear. It failed to gain traction, mostly because it was distributed during intermission, when everyone's mouths were full. Some historians speculate that the olive pit custom faded once theaters became more formalized, with seating assignments, ticketing, and eventually ushers who really didn't want to sweep that much. But in these early, chaotic, snack-filled years, the olive was king, edible, symbolic, slightly weaponized. Tomorrow, you'll meet Aristophanes, the playwright who turned snack carts into punchlines and may have invented on-stage product placement 2,000 years too early. But tonight, you gently pocket your last pit. No need to throw it. This monologue, finally, is getting good. The monologue ends. The actor bows, a few polite claps, one yawn. Somewhere, a goat sneezes. But before the next scene begins, a small commotion starts near the lower steps of the audience. The part closest to the vendors, where theatergoers gather between acts to replenish their olives and compare opinions loudly. You crane your neck to see. Two men, both draped in the kind of robes that scream, "My father owns a vineyard," are locked in a heated argument. Not over politics, not over the play, over a grape, or more specifically, over who spilled it, stepped on it, and caused one of them to slip dramatically into a tray of stuffed figs. Welcome to the Great Grape Incident. Here's what's known. It's late in the festival. The sun is high, people are hot, sticky, and at least 2 amphorae of wine into the afternoon. Snacks are plentiful. Focus is not. As the crowd repositions between acts, someone drops a single grape, plump, perfectly ripe, and far too round for a stone theater floor. It rolls, it waits, strikes. The first man steps on it, slips. The second man, carrying a delicate clay tray of fig pastries, tumbles forward. Figs fly. One lands in the lap of the city magistrate. Another hits a mask vendor. The tray shatters with a noise more dramatic than anything the chorus has managed so far. Silence. Then, polite horror. Then, snorting laughter from the back row. The incident becomes legend before the third act even starts. Actors whisper about it backstage. Vendors argue about liability. Someone pens a poem in honor of the fallen fig. One grape betrayed us. A tray of figs met their fate. Theater, delicious. Later, Aristophanes himself would reference the event in a satirical play, inventing a character named Dion the Slipper, who carries a fake tray and delivers every line while nervously checking the floor. But beyond the comedy, the grape incident taught the Athenians a critical truth. Snacks have power. They can elevate a show, they can unite a crowd, and occasionally they can cause mild, elegant chaos. In the aftermath, some theaters began assigning food stewards, early ushers whose only job was to keep walkways grape-free and gently remind patrons not to juggle figs while wearing sandals. Did it help? Marginally. Did it stop people from eating during the climactic stabbing scene? Absolutely not. Tomorrow, you'll delve into the curious case of honey cakes and hecklers and how one became a reward while the other nearly started a food fight. But tonight, you glance at the broken fig lying near the stage edge. The magistrate, still brushing crumbs from his robe, waves it off with a sigh, and the play resumes with just a little more caution and a whole lot more audience attention. Because after all, who needs tragedy when you've got snacks and gravity on your side? You settle back in, careful this time, not just with your balance, but with your food. The memory of that fig explosion still lingers in the air, sticky and cautionary. Across the amphitheater, the crowd has quieted slightly, not out of reverence for the drama, but out of respect for physics. The chorus returns, the actors prepare, and somewhere from behind a stone pillar, a vendor's voice cuts through the tension like a well-placed drum beat. Honey cakes, still warm. Buy now or cry later. Heads turn, and just like that, the show has competition. You spot the vendor, a short, wiry man with a tunic covered in flour and the confidence of someone who knows he holds the true power of the festival, snack supremacy. He's not alone. A second vendor, taller, smug, emerges from the opposite side of the theater, holding a platter of dried dates wrapped in almond leaves. The air grows tense because this is snack turf war. Welcome to the era of honey cakes and hecklers. You see, as theater attendance exploded, so did snack culture. Vendors weren't just tolerated, they were expected. Theaters became culinary arenas, and the best vendors had reputations to rival the actors. But with popularity came rules. In certain festivals, honey cakes became a premium item, only sold before the opening act and never during dramatic scenes. This wasn't law, it was etiquette, and it was mostly observed until it wasn't. One festival years ago, a particularly bold vendor tried selling honey cakes during a funeral scene. As the actor sobbed over his dead son, the vendor bellowed, "Buy two, get a fig biscuit free." The crowd burst out laughing. The actor? He stormed off stage. What followed was one of the strangest resolutions in Athenian cultural history, a new, unofficial policy. If you heckled the play, you lost your snack. Actors were given the right, supported by priestly nod, to confiscate food from unruly audience members. There are stories, likely exaggerated, of a performer leaping into the crowd mid-monologue and snatching a honey cake from someone loudly chewing during his death speech. The cake was later returned, but bitten. In retaliation, vendors got clever. Some began bribing chorus members to mention their treats during songs. Others offered applause discounts. Clap loud enough, get a sesame roll. And the audience? They played along. Because while the stories were sacred, the snacks were sacred adjacent. You finish your own honey cake, a small golden square that melts between your fingers, and feel a little closer to both the divine and the deeply relatable. Tomorrow, you'll meet Aristophanes and the snack cart and explore the strange beginnings of product placement in 5th century comedy. But tonight, you listen to the final lines of the chorus, sweet crumbs on your lips, and think, if tragedy is salted with tears, then surely comedy is dusted with honey. The lights, well, the sun, shift slightly as another act winds down. The audience begins to stretch, yawn, and shuffle. It's that golden moment between performances when the energy softens and people become their realist selves, unmasked, unfiltered, and extremely interested in who's got what to eat. And right on cue, a rickety cart wheels into view at the side of the amphitheater. It's decorated with grapevine motifs, a few poorly drawn masks, and a lopsided wooden sign that reads in very informal handwriting, "Sa, snack and satire, as approved by the god himself." That's not just any cart. That's Aristophanes' snack cart. And if you're wondering whether the legendary playwright of Greek comedy really dabbled in concession sales, he didn't, probably, but he definitely wrote about them. You see, Aristophanes was no stranger to food. In fact, food was practically a supporting character in many of his plays. He mocked politicians for eating too much. He used sausages as metaphors for democracy. One of his most famous comedies, The Knights, includes a scene where someone tries to win political power through culinary superiority. This man didn't just use snacks as props, he used them as punchlines. And rumor has it, during one particularly cheeky production, he staged a fake intermission vendor, a chorus member in disguise, who rolled out a cart filled with props and literal treats. As he sold fig balls and cheese-stuffed leaves to the crowd, he improvised commentary on the play as it was happening. Buy a honey roll. It's sweeter than that actor's fake tears. The audience, delighted. The actors, mixed feelings. The priests, allegedly furious, but definitely chewing something. Some say this bit became so popular that real vendors began copying it, commenting on scenes as they sold their goods, turning the aisles into sideshows. Was it disruptive? Yes. Was it brilliant? Also yes. The line between performer and seller blurred, much like the line between story and snack had long since vanished. Aristophanes, of course, was in on the joke. He believed theater should reflect life, and life in Athens always included food. His comedies were noisy, layered, a little chaotic, and filled with characters who always seemed to be eating something, complaining about what others were eating, or plotting to steal a meal mid-dialogue. He didn't invent the snack cart, but he might have made it iconic. You glance toward the cart now. Real or not, the idea lingers. The vendor is halfway through shouting a limerick about lentil stew when a small boy interrupts to ask if the cakes come with extra sesame. They do. Tomorrow, you'll follow the curious evolution of the wineskin aisle drinkers, audience members who kept Dionysus alive with every shared sip. But tonight, you watch the cart disappear into the crowd, leaving behind laughter, crumbs, and a new line in your dream log. Comedy smells like cheese. Tragedy tastes like olives. Theater lives in the snack. The sun starts to dip, casting long shadows across the stone seats. The actors retreat for a brief change, and the chorus takes a break, one of them dramatically removing his mask with a sigh that suggests he's been crying on stage for 4 hours, and also just really wants a drink. And that's exactly what he's going to get. Because no theater experience in ancient Greece, no matter how sacred, tragic, or fig-filled, would be complete without the quiet, sloshing magic of a wineskin passed in the aisles. You see it happening already. A pair of older men, clearly lifelong theatergoers, lean in, uncork a goatskin pouch, and take turns sipping. The liquid is dark, thin, slightly sour, not the fancy stuff reserved for temples or symposiums, but theater wine, watered down, sun-warmed, and perfect for sharing. This isn't about intoxication, it's about ritual. Because the wineskin wasn't just a drink, it was a gesture. A portable offering, a way of saying, we're in this together, as you all prepare to cry, laugh, or throw olive pits at the next monologue. A woman a few rows ahead waves her neighbor over and offers a sip from her smaller pouch, embroidered with tiny ivy leaves, a subtle nod to Dionysus. He accepts with a bow and trades a handful of roasted chickpeas in return. Bartering, social bonding, aisle snacks. Welcome to Wine Culture, Audience Edition. The sharing wasn't random. Many wineskins were patched clockwise, mimicking the direction of festival processions. Others were reserved for post-performance toasts, especially after a comedy when the line between actor and audience had all but evaporated. Some even named their wineskins. One fragment of a comic poem survives. To Cleo, my wineskin, more faithful than my wife and less critical during the third act. Not everyone approved, of course. Playwrights occasionally wrote passive-aggressive characters who made bad decisions because they'd had too much wine during a tragedy. The message? Sip. Don't slosh. Still, the tradition endured. Some historians suggest the wineskin was the earliest form of intermission toast, an embodied version of clapping, shared by the lips instead of the hands. A few even believe that certain chants from the chorus were timed to coincide with drinking, a call and sip structure that turned watching theater into a kind of low-key communion. You look to your own lap now, a modest wineskin, soft, light, probably only a few sips left. You drink slowly. It's tart, herbal, and slightly smoky, like something between pomegranate juice and sunburned vinegar. But in this moment, it's perfect. Tomorrow you'll witness how a snack seller outshined an entire cast and learn what happens when the audience turns its attention to the wrong performance. But tonight, you pass your wineskin to the stranger beside you. He accepts, smiles, and just like that, you're no longer alone in your row. You're part of the ritual, part of the laughter, part of the long, weird, delicious tradition of theater as a shared meal. The actors return, their sandals dusted, their tunics slightly askew. You can tell they've just had a quick bite, probably olives, maybe a dry cheese square, definitely something that leaves crumbs in a beard. They take their places. The scene begins. A woman, wailing. A brother, betrayed. A goat, inexplicably chewing the corner of a prop. It's supposed to be the emotional climax, the moment everything changes, hearts are broken, tears fall, fate looms large. But nobody's watching, because somewhere behind the back row, two vendors are in a full-blown, dramatic showdown of their own. One is selling fig rolls, the other, honeyed nuts. And their carts, very unfortunately, have collided. You see the fig vendor jab a finger toward the other's tray. That's my corner. The nut seller, unbothered, casually sprinkles sesame over his goods and replies, "Then next time, roll straighter." Tension. Real tension. The kind the play is failing to generate. Someone in the front row glances back, then someone else. And within moments, the audience slowly, collectively begins turning away from the stage. Because when tragedy fails, snack drama prevails. What happens next enters Athens lore. The nut vendor, in an effort to reclaim attention, begins performing. Not in mockery, but with style. He flips a fig roll, tosses a cluster of candied almonds into the air and catches it in his mouth. Bows, flourishes his apron, begins narrating his snack preparation in rhymed verse. From orchard to oven, from sun into sack, this snack is a story, not just a snack. The crowd erupts. Laughter, clapping, cheering. Someone throws a grape in celebration. On stage, the actress playing the mourning widow stares into the void. She's delivering lines about despair. And the only despair is that her monologue now has competition. The play continues, but the audience doesn't return their gaze. The vendor steals the show. Unintentionally, yes, but undeniably. It becomes known as the first and only recorded case of vendor supplanting. The next day, the playwright filed an official complaint. A new rule was whispered around festival organizers. No carts within arm's reach of Act 3. Did it stop the vendors? No, but it taught everyone a valuable lesson. Snack sellers were part of the theater, whether sanctioned or not. And sometimes, they were better performers. Tomorrow, you'll explore how ancient intermissions evolved into mini-feasts, complete with cheese, grapes, and gossip. A time when the story paused, but the food absolutely did not. But tonight, you finish your handful of nuts, sweet, warm, likely overpriced, and smile. Because only in a Dionysian theater could a man with a tray and a rhyme steal the thunder from the gods. And honestly, he earned the applause. The crowd is still buzzing from the snack cart incident. Fig vendor fuming, nut vendor basking, actors pretending they're not slightly offended. The sun, now dipping lazily behind the hills, casts everything in honey gold. It's late afternoon, and that can only mean one thing. But don't think of it like the dimmed house, popcorn refill, bathroom break intermission we know today. No, this is the intermission feast. A fully sanctioned, socially anticipated, sometimes chaotic stretch of time where food was not just permitted, it was the main attraction. The chorus files off. The actors disappear. A small gong sounds somewhere near the temple steps, not to call the faithful, but to signal the unofficial buffet line, now forming along the amphitheater's outer walls. Vendors hustle, baskets open, cloths unfold like magic carpets of salted, sun-cured glory. And you follow your nose. First stop, a woman selling stuffed grape leaves, plump with herbs, barley, and something lemony. She wraps them in waxy fig leaves and hands them over with a wink and an extra olive. Next stall, a boy with a tray of goat cheese slices balanced on dark bread, topped with pomegranate seeds. His pitch, chewy sadness for tragic scenes. You buy two. You hear snippets as you walk. I cried during the second act, but I think it was the garlic. He fumbled the curse line again, same as last year. That nut vendor should be cast next time. This is more than a snack break. This is half the experience. Athenians knew theater was long, sometimes all day, especially during Dionysia festivals, so intermission became its own ritualized meal. Think picnic meets poetry club, gossip meets grazing. People shared food, swapped opinions, flirted, napped, reenacted favorite lines with crumbs on their lips and cheese in their hands. There are even records, scratched into bits of pottery, of couples who met during intermission snack exchanges and later married at the next festival. A good tragedy could move the soul, but a well-balanced fig platter? That could change your life. Of course, there were rules. Don't eat loudly during others' recitations, don't haggle mid-bite, and never offer spoiled olives to someone holding a wineskin. That's how duels start. You find a spot on a low stone wall and unwrap your leaf bundle, warm from the sun. The cheese is sharp, the bread is soft, the seeds pop like applause. And in this pause, this golden in-between, you realize something. The story hasn't stopped, it's just shifted. From stage to snack, from monologue to mouthful, from scripted sorrow to spontaneous joy. Tomorrow, you'll hear the tale of Dionysus and the dry crackers. A mythical protest against blandness that may or may not have involved divine rain. But tonight, you lick pomegranate juice from your fingers, laugh at a misremembered line, and watch as the sun folds itself behind the vineyard hills. The second act will begin soon, but for now, you feast, as the gods intended. The sun has dipped just enough that everything glows. The stone steps, the wine stains, even the tips of the actors' wigs backstage. Intermission is winding down, but your stomach is content, and your mind is gently buzzing from goat cheese, barley bread, and possibly half a wineskin too many. And just as you're settling back into your seat, a breeze picks up. Cool, sudden. Smells like thyme, roasted onions, and a whisper of story. Because now comes a tale passed down in murmurs and spilled wine. Dionysus hates dry crackers. Not dislikes, not avoids. Hates. According to legend, a small, dramatic myth told mostly by snack vendors and drunken chorus interns, there was once a group of overly serious, painfully sober festival organizers who attempted to introduce a new snack standard. The reasoning? Too much honey, too many sticky figs, the crumbs are disrespectful, the laughter is uncontrolled. So they announced a change. From this year forward, snacks at Dionysian performances would be simple, plain, dry. They rolled out a new approved item, a hard, flavorless wheat cracker. No salt, no glaze, no joy. The audience, understandably, revolted. But it wasn't until the third day of the festival when an especially brave vendor dared to sell unsanctioned honey cakes in secret that the skies turned. Mid-performance, during a painfully dull tragedy about paperwork and inheritance law, clouds gathered. The actor on stage, playing a cursed notary, delivered his big emotional line, "And now, I file alone. Cue. Thunder. Then wind." As the crowd clutched their cloaks and the chorus stumbled backward, a sudden, spectacular downpour, but not of water, of diluted wine and crushed grapes. Sticky, fragrant, completely unexpected. The audience screamed. The priests panicked. The cracker distribution tent collapsed, and in the chaos someone, a child maybe, or a slightly tipsy cheese merchant, looked up at the storm and whispered, "Dionysus is displeased." The myth spread fast. By the next festival, dry crackers were gone, and in their place, the return of figs, olives, cheese stuffed in dates, even a new item, a soft roll made with barley, honey, and a pinch of sea salt, nicknamed the rain bread. Some scholars dismiss the story as food vendor propaganda. Others note that that particular year was unusually rainy. Either way, the message stuck. Dionysus does not bless the bland. He is the god of wine, of chaos, of sudden joy. Of course, he'd reject a snack that tastes like beige. Tomorrow, you'll wander the aisles where masks were sold next to snack trays and explore how food and identity merge during festival days. But tonight, you savor your last bite of soft, sticky cake. You look toward the stars just beginning to emerge behind drifting clouds, and you smile. Because in this theater, under this god, flavor is sacred. And dryness, that's for tragedies. The stars have begun to settle in overhead, blinking slowly like drowsy spectators. The second act is still finding its footing, a family curse, a missing goat, probably a metaphor for democracy. But your attention drifts sideways, not because the play is boring, but because of what's happening just outside the performance space. A row of stalls has sprung up like mushrooms after Dionysian rain. Some sell wine. Others sell oil lamps shaped like tiny tragic masks. One, very notably, is offering grilled cheese flatbreads with a side of smug. But the one that catches your eye? A modest wooden booth lit by a single flickering torch, stacked high with small, intricately carved biscuits shaped like theater masks. Welcome to the world's first known merch booth. Yes. Even in ancient Greece, land of marble math and metaphysical questioning, someone had the brilliant idea. What if we sold edible souvenirs shaped like the experience itself? These weren't just cookies, they were theatrical talismans. One tray features smiling masks stamped with tiny almond eyes and sesame seed teeth. Another holds weeping ones, drizzled with honey in long, sticky streaks. There's even a limited batch modeled after the lead actor's very unfortunate beard. Each purchase came wrapped in a fig leaf or woven in a grapevine ribbon, depending on whether you were team tragedy or team comedy. You approach the vendor, a wiry woman with quick hands and flour on her nose. She eyes you, guesses your vibe, and plucks a cookie from the mildly tragic, surprisingly nutty basket. "This one weeps in almond paste," he says, "but only from the left eye." You take it. You bite. It's soft, crumbly, somehow deeply emotional. The trend started, according to whispered legend, with a chorus member who moonlighted as a baker. After a particularly underwhelming performance, he tried cheering up the cast with cookies shaped like their masks, exaggerated, edible versions of their roles. The actors laughed, then ate, then asked if he could make more for the audience. And thus, the snack mask was born. Soon, every festival had a booth. Some even let you customize your cookie, tragedy mask with extra honey, or sadder face but make it spicy. It became common for couples to gift each other matching cookies after the show. For children, trade to them like sacred tokens. For old men to keep a half-bitten mask in their cloak pocket for luck. You buy a second, a comedy one this time, hazelnut and lemon, crunchier, surprisingly uplifting. Tomorrow, you'll explore the strange belief that eating figs during sad plays made crying easier, a literal fusion of emotion and digestion. But tonight, you sit with your two cookies, one laughing, one crying, and let the torchlight flicker across their flour-dusted features. You think, this is theater, not just what's on the stage, but what you carry home in your hands. And maybe, if you're lucky, on your tongue. You sit cross-legged on a sun-warmed stone, the comedy cookie half-eaten in your hand, the tragedy one tucked neatly into your sash like a backup emotional plan. The actors are still mid-conflict. Someone's lost a cousin, someone else has found a prophecy in a puddle, but your focus has shifted to a soft, squishy snack being passed down your row. Figs. Dark, ripe, glossy as candle wax, split open just enough to reveal a glint of amber inside. Sticky. Sweet. Slightly suggestive. You take one, because of course you do. Because tonight's final tale is one of the strangest and most deeply believed snack superstitions in the entire Dionysian world. Sweet figs and bitter plays. It goes like this. If you're watching a tragedy, a real one, with betrayal, loss, blind oracles, and mothers yelling at sons, you should eat a fig. Why? Because it helps you cry. That's right. Ancient Athenians believed figs didn't just satisfy hunger. They unlocked feeling. There are fragments of poetry and bits of marginalia in old ledgers that say things like, "He could not weep until the fig was bitten, a fruit for sorrow, soft for the soul. Better to drip honey than to hold stone." Modern historians have argued whether this belief was metaphor, placebo, or poetic nonsense. But the practice? It was real. Vendors sold weep figs near the entrances to the theater. Some were chilled in clay pots to keep them fresh. Others were dried and dipped in light wine, then wrapped in fig leaves with handwritten notes like "for catharsis," or "pairs well with betrayal." One particularly dramatic playwright even included figs in his stage directions. Chorus enters weeping. Audience encouraged to consume fig. Scene continues. A shared emotional snack. A bite that invites tears. A fruit that bridges stomach and soul. You eat your fig slowly. It is impossibly tender. The skin gives way to grainy sweetness, like a story you've heard before but still feel. You're not crying, yet, but you feel something shift behind your eyes. Around you, others chew in silence. Not because the play is gripping, honestly, it's dragging a bit, but because the fig has worked its quiet magic. It gives you permission to soften, to empathize, to let go. Tomorrow, you'll peer into the sacred seating of the priest, who always had the best snacks and the best view. But tonight, you lick the juice from your fingers. You glance toward the stage, where the hero kneels in shame, and you let your throat tighten just a little, because even if you're not crying for him, you're crying with him. And maybe that's what the fig was for all along. The lights, or rather the fading sun and the flickering torches, cast a long golden hush over the amphitheater. The play is building toward something grand, a betrayal revealed, a fate sealed, a dramatic pause just long enough for the lead actor to stare at the audience like he knows your secrets. You shift slightly, the stone beneath you warm and smooth, and as your eyes wander down toward the front row, you see it. The best seat in the house. Wider, cushioned, decorated with carved ivy and lion heads, and directly in front of it, placed with reverent symmetry, is a small, perfect plate of what looks like roasted chestnuts, a folded fig leaf, and what could only be a soft square of goat's milk cheese. That's not for you. That's for the priest of Dionysus. Because while theater was for the people and laughter for the crowd, the very first and arguably most pampered guest at any performance was the priest. He didn't sit there because he was the best critic. He sat there because he was the reason the show happened at all. That seat, known as the prohedria, was sacred, reserved, unchallenged, and always accompanied by a plate of the good stuff. While the rest of the audience nibbled shared olives and slightly squashed barley rolls, the priest's snacks were ceremonially arranged, the first fruits of the festival's offerings. Seasonal, symbolic, delicious. Pomegranate seeds for clarity, honeyed nuts for divine sweetness, wine-dipped bread for sacred indulgence, and occasionally a cube of something so fragrant that nearby audience members sighed just to smell it. There are records, scratched into pottery shards, of course, of priests who took their snacks very seriously. One allegedly refused to bless the opening chorus until his plate included properly split figs and nothing touching the goat cheese. Another was rumored to swap out olives depending on the theme of the play. Tragedy equals black, comedy equals green, obviously. And while some might scoff, it's just food, it's just a seat, for the Athenians, ritual mattered. To feed the priest well was to feed the god himself. And Dionysus? He had standards. You lean forward now, watching as a young assistant kneels and replaces the priest's napkin. Yes, napkin, woven linen, single use, scented with lavender. The priest, unmoved, continues watching the play, expression serene, like someone who has never in his life eaten anything cold or mediocre. A child nearby whispers, "Do you think the priest ever shares?" You all know the answer. Never. Tomorrow you'll stumble into the chaotic story of a food fight over coconut cakes, and the rare moment when priest, vendor, and chorus all lost their cool. But tonight, you chew the last of your crumbly barley biscuit. You watch the priest sip his wine like it's moonlight, and you think, someday, when you're reincarnated as a fig tree or a marble bench, let it be near the prohedria, where the view is best, and the snacks are always blessed. The next act begins with a slap. Not metaphorical, an actual stage-left slap that echoes through the amphitheater with theatrical precision. The audience gasps, the actor staggers, a chorus member winces in admiration, but your attention is elsewhere. Specifically, on the far corner of the amphitheater, where two men in fine robes are currently shouting about coconut cakes. Not just any coconut cakes. Festival limited, honey-drenched, shaved coconut-dusted delicacies only sold on the final day of the Dionysia. They're rare. They're coveted, and they've caused a scene so legendary it now has its own tragic nickname, the Sweetest War. Here's what happened. According to half the crowd and one frantic vendor, the man in the blue robe, tall, loud, and known for over-seasoning his olives, bought the last two cakes. According to the other half and his opponent in red, he cut the line and bribed the vendor with a wedge of imported cheese. Neither side had evidence. Everyone had opinions. Voices rose, sleeves were pointed. A chorus member peeked out from behind the stage curtain to see what all the fuss was about, and then promptly joined the argument on behalf of the red-robed man. He'd been promised a bite earlier. And in the midst of this escalating chaos, a coconut cake went flying. Not thrown in anger, just bumped, slipped, launched with perfect theatrical irony into the lap of, you guessed it, the priest. The entire crowd froze. Time slowed. Even Dionysus might have paused wherever he was. The priest looked down at the sticky, shredded coconut now decorating his ceremonial robe. He said nothing. He didn't have to, because moments later, two assistants gently escorted both men out, robes rustling, cheeks flushed, coconuts still clinging to their sleeves. The priest calmly picked up the cake, took a bite, and smiled. The performance resumed, with a few ad-lib lines about pastry theft and divine judgment. The incident sparked a ripple of new policies: maximum cake quantities per person, vendor location limits, no projectiles, intentional or otherwise, clause in festival guidelines. But more than rules, it gave the audience something new to talk about, and it gave the vendors a story to sell with flair. Buy your own cake. Don't wait to steal the priest's. Tomorrow, you'll overhear tales of promotion by nap performance, a system so absurd it could only work in a world where snack fights were sacred and wine was a management tool. But tonight, you lick a smudge of honey from your thumb, you watch the actors return to their tragic unraveling, and you remind yourself, in Dionysus theater, no act is ever too dramatic, especially if coconut is involved. Section Age is dim now, lit only by torchlight and the occasional glint of drama. A character curses his lineage, another swears revenge. The chorus moans in carefully practiced harmony. You are not moaning, you are sipping a lukewarm herbal infusion and trying to recover from the chaos of the great coconut incident. And then just behind you, someone whispers, "He got promoted because he napped through an entire monologue." You blink, not because you're surprised, but because you've heard this rumor before. And now you're finally about to understand the strange, oddly serene tradition known in hushed tones as snooze promotions. Here's how it worked. In certain theater-adjacent bureaucracies, temple scribes, festival coordinators, amphitheater logistics, Your ability to nap under pressure was seen as a sign of wisdom, balance, and emotional self-regulation. Could you sleep during a thunderous tragedy and wake without drooling on your records? Congratulations. You're middle management now. This wasn't laziness. It was philosophy. The idea? If you could rest amid chaos, if you could snooze peacefully during a 3-hour choral lamentation surrounded by snack rustling and distant fig disputes, you had what it took to lead calmly in high-stress environments. Sleep was self-trust. One scroll, poorly copied but still referenced, described a man named Lycon who slept so deeply during a political satire that a goat stepped on him, and he did not flinch. He awoke at intermission, nodded, and was promptly promoted to supply chief. The test became semi-official. Candidates were told, lie on the ceremonial mat. You have until the next stage cue to sleep. Judges sat nearby. They listened. They watched for twitches. Points were deducted for loud snoring, mid-nap commentary, rolling into someone else's cheese plate. But points were awarded for even breathing, peaceful expression, waking with a bow. It was all very serious. Some festival organizers even faked theatrical disruptions, loud prop drops, surprise goat appearances to test if a sleeper remained composed. And if you passed, you didn't get a gold seal. You got something better. An embroidered napcloth, stamped with the phrase, "He rests, therefore he rules." You glance down at your seatmate who is currently sleeping through a rather intense stage argument. His arms are folded. His expression? Serene. His snack pouch untouched. You nod, quietly impressed. Tomorrow, you'll wander into the world of government-sanctioned nap decrees and learn how the shogunate of snacks made siestas a civic duty. But tonight, you soften into your seat. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your mind drift. Let the drama swirl without reaching you, because maybe, just maybe, you're ready for your own promotion. The flames flicker in the torch sconces, casting tall shadows across the stage. A minor character is dramatically confessing to a crime involving sheep, a broken lyre, and something metaphorical about fate. The crowd listens, mostly. A few lean into the story, but many? They're dreaming, and not in the figurative, what if I were a famous playwright sense. No, they're literally asleep, or close to it, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Because just before this act began, you heard it. A soft melodic chime. 3 notes, low and warm. The nap bell. And with it comes one of the most charming, most improbable traditions of the ancient theater world, the dream log. Here's how it worked. Midway through the longest day of Dionysian festival performances, usually after the second tragedy but before the satyr play, a bell would ring, signaling a brief, communal dream window. Audience members were encouraged to lean back, close their eyes, and enter what was referred to, gently, reverently, as a shared drift. This wasn't laziness. It was sanctioned visioning. And if you dreamed something during this time, you could write it down on clay, papyrus, even the back of your ticket, and submit it to the festival dream log. Curated by a few extremely underpaid scribes and one overconfident mystic, this log became a repository of half-coherent, poetic, deeply odd visions. Some were beautiful. I dreamed of a mask floating over the sea, filled with wine. It wept. Others were confusing. 2 goats debated justice. One had a human face, possibly my uncle. But once in a while, a dream was declared prophetically delicious, usually meaning it featured food and also predicted something minor but accurate, like a thunderstorm or a costume malfunction. One year, a boy dreamed of figs falling from the sky. Later that day, a fig vendor did, in fact, trip and launch his basket into the air. The dream was logged. The boy received free snacks for life. This system wasn't official, and yet somehow it held weight. Actors sometimes consulted the dream log before performing a pivotal scene. Vendors quoted it on chalkboards. One particularly ambitious chorus member once wrote an entire ode based on a stranger's nap vision about dancing satyrs and melting cheese. You, of course, are intrigued. You lean your head back, let your eyes flutter, let the drone of the chorus blur into a hum, and you let yourself drift. Not deeply, just enough to dream. Snack cart on fire, a goat reciting poetry, a cookie shaped like a mask breaking in half. You wake gently, the bell sounds again, 2 notes this time. The dream window closes. Someone beside you scribbles on a bit of parchment. You consider doing the same. Tomorrow, you'll explore the invention of the lacquered nap desk. Sleek, shiny, and designed for optimal mid-rehearsal slumber. But tonight, you sit quietly, eyes half closed, mind half here, and wonder, what dream will you leave behind in the log? And will anyone, 1,000 years from now, still remember it with a smile? The play is shifting again. New actors, new lighting, a flute wailing softly in the background like someone left sorrow simmering on low heat. But instead of watching, your eyes drift sideways to the object just past the orchestra pit. At first glance, it looks like a writing table. Polished, smooth, the color of wet plum bark. But its surface is curved ever so slightly, not for parchment or scrolls, for a forehead. This is not just furniture. This is the glorious, glorious invention of the lacquered nap desk. Let's back up. As theater culture expanded and more officials, organizers, and semi-important snack supervisors were required to attend full-day performances, a problem arose. People were exhausted. And unlike audience members who could lean, slouch, or sprawl without judgment, these festival workers were expected to maintain a kind of upright nobility. Difficult when you've been reviewing goat parade logistics since sunrise. So someone, a carpenter, a poet, or perhaps a truly tired junior scribe, had an idea. What if a desk, but for the soul? Enter the lacquered nap desk. Not too high, not too low, just wide enough to rest your folded arms, and just soft enough, thanks to a layer of waxed linen, to keep forehead creases to a minimum. It became an instant hit among overworked festival staff. You could find them scattered behind the stage curtain, near the ticket counters, in tucked-away alcoves beside the wine jugs. There was even a brief fashion trend, carrying forehead cloths embroidered with inspirational phrases like "dream briefly" and "rest is research." A few desks were even personalized. One had tiny carvings of olives along the edge, a nod to the user's favorite snack. Another had cup holders. That user was a visionary. One had a hidden compartment containing emergency sesame rolls, which were later discovered by a curious cat during Act 4 of Orestes and the Overcooked Lentils. Of course, not everyone approved. A famous playwright once accused nap desks of dulling the sacred edge of performance critique, but he was later caught snoring into his script during rehearsal and never lived it down. You approach one now, gently, run your fingers along the glossy edge. It is cool, inviting. It whispers, "You've done enough thinking for today." You place your arms down, lower your head, and breathe. You think, this is better than applause. Tomorrow you'll explore how some dreams were officially filed in festival records, marked as visionary and occasionally influenced public policy. But tonight, you close your eyes and let the lacquered desk carry you not into paperwork, but into peace. You awaken, not with a start, but with the slow, blissful drift of someone who's just been held by polished wood and silence. Around you, the amphitheater has shifted again. A new chorus enters. Someone's wearing a wig made entirely of grapevines. But what catches your attention isn't on stage. It's in the hands of the scribe 2 rows ahead of you. A wide scroll, unfurled with care, inscribed in tidy columns of ink and dreams. Yes, dreams. Not poems. Not stage directions. Not goat inventory. These are actual entries from the official festival dream records. Because sometimes, just sometimes, a nap during a play didn't just refresh your mind or inspire your appetite. It informed policy. This was the curious, rarely invoked, oddly respected tradition known as dreams filed with reports. Here's how it worked. Each year during the Dionysia, a select group of scribes and temple assistants were tasked with reviewing the dreams submitted to the festival's log. Yes, the very same dreams recorded after the nap bell's gentle chime. Most dreams were poetic nonsense. I was a vine, but also a rabbit. The olives argued, one wore sandals. But every so often, a dream was declared monkoik, a useful vision. This required it to meet at least 2 of the following. Refer to real civic events, offer symbolic insight into a current problem, contain snack-related metaphors that made practical sense. If a dream passed, it was filed, officially, stamped, copied, stored. Sometimes even read aloud at the closing ceremony while the crowd murmured with awe and quietly passed baskets of dates. One famous example, a festival clerk dreamed that 2 wine jugs were arguing about taxes and one rolled down the hill into the sea. The next week, a new tax on wine was rescinded after complaints from coastal traders. Coincidence? Maybe. Prophetic bureaucracy? Also maybe. Even more curiously, dreams were coded. A small fig icon meant snack-inspired. A star meant potentially divine. A tiny sandal scribble involves unexpected travel. You peer over the scribe's shoulder. Today's new entry. Dreamed of an actor who forgot his lines, then found a fig inside his mask. Play improved. Stamped with a fig and a star. You smile. Because in this world, under Dionysus' playful, unpredictable gaze, even your sleep could become civic contribution. Tomorrow, you'll chuckle through the tale of the 3 supervisors who accidentally held a staff meeting in their dreams. Together. But tonight, you close your eyes again. Let the whisper of parchment lull you. And wonder, if you dream something worthy, something small, strange, and sweet, will they file it? Will someone somewhere read it aloud? With honey on their tongue? The actors have shifted into what appears to be a heated inheritance dispute. Someone's pointing at a scroll, someone else is dramatically clutching their chest, and the chorus is humming in minor key like it's a legal thriller with sandals. But off to the side, near the shade of a grapevine trellis, a very different drama is unfolding. 3 men sprawled on a woven mat, snoring in perfect unison. You recognize them immediately. Not just from earlier festival announcements, but from the dream records. These are the supervisors, mid-ranking but highly respected festival staff. Their job? Organizing crowd flow, managing snack stall rotation, and ensuring no one brings a goat backstage after Act 2. And yet, here they are. Together. No shame, no apology, just 3 dignified grown men curled up like dormice, their hands folded neatly on their bellies, their sandals carefully aligned at the corner of the mat. This isn't dereliction. This is tradition. They're part of a long, hilarious, oddly respected history known fondly among festival goers as supervisors who snore together. It began decades ago with 3 overworked administrators who, unable to find separate napping spots, agreed to lie down on the same mat just for 10 minutes. According to legend, they all fell asleep at once, dreamed of the same scenario, goat auction gone wrong, and woke up with the same solution to a staffing issue that had plagued the festival for weeks. Coincidence? Maybe. Magic? Possibly. Snack-related groupthink? Almost certainly. From that moment on, the trio became a kind of myth, not for what they accomplished awake, but for what they coordinated in their dreams. The snoring circle, as it came to be called, turned into a half-joke, half-policy. If the supervisors nap together, don't wake them. They might be resolving something. And they were. Dream logs from past years record such entries as dreamed we ran out of figs, decided to stagger vendor hours, saw a goat selling masks, realized we needed clearer backstage security. All dreamed of rain, ordered extra canopies next morning. Rained. You glance back at the trio now, one shifts slightly, murmuring something about sesame rolls. The other mumbles, "Not the lentils again." And the third smiles. It's oddly comforting, like knowing someone's doing the hard work while dreaming in harmony. Tomorrow, you'll step into the philosophy behind it all, when napping became a declared work ethic, a badge of balance and worth. But tonight, you exhale softly, because even though they snore, even though they drool, even though one of them is definitely hogging the corner of the mat, you trust them. After all, if 3 supervisors can dream the same dream and solve a festival problem without ever opening their eyes, maybe sleep really is the highest form of wisdom. The sun is starting its final descent, softening everything into gold. Shadows stretch like stage curtains, long and dramatic. A sadder play is warming up somewhere off stage. You can hear hooves clacking and someone tuning a flute by humming into it. But here, in the quieter circle of worn stone where administrators, scribes, vendors, and very opinionated snack critics have gathered, a phrase is murmured with quiet reverence. He naps well. He must be competent. Welcome to one of the strangest, most beautifully illogical ideas in the ancient theater bureaucracy, napping as a work ethic. It sounds absurd, but it's real and remarkably resilient. For a time, especially during the high years of the Dionysian festivals, the ability to sleep easily in chaotic environments wasn't just admired, it was valued, celebrated, even used as a metric of leadership. You see, in the theater world, where emotions ran high, schedules ran late, and goats ran freely, tension was constant. Only the calmest minds could handle the endless tide of logistics, accidents, chorus debates, and snack shortages. So naturally, someone asked, what if the real test of readiness was rest? Thus, the theory emerged. One who naps amidst paperwork fears no deadline. It became both joke and wisdom. A quiet, unspoken rule among festival planners, seat ushers, costume managers. If you can sleep with 100 actors yelling, vendors arguing about fig syrup prices, and someone rehearsing their death monologue at full volume, you're not slacking. You're stable. You trust the process. You trust your team. You trust that tomorrow's performance will unfold as it always does, with tragedy, snacks, and slightly misfitting masks. Over time, the nap became a badge. Some carried embroidered sleep cloths with phrases like, "Stillness is strategy. He who dreams leads clean. Nap, then act." One legendary coordinator was known to hold entire status updates from a reclined position, eyes closed, simply raising fingers to answer yes-no questions. It was said he never spoke above a whisper and never missed a deadline. Was this system perfect? No. Was it gentle? Deeply. You think of modern workplaces, of meetings, alarms, alerts, urgency disguised as productivity, and you wonder, what if you were judged not by how fast you reply, but by how deeply you breathe when the world turns loud? Tomorrow, you'll chuckle through the official napping edict issued by the shogunate. Yes, they really put it in writing. But tonight, you stretch your legs, fold your arms behind your head, let your eyes drift half closed, and think, in this theater of gods and crumbs, maybe sleep isn't the break from work. Maybe sleep is the work. The torches have been relit, flickering against the stone with a steady rhythm like a chorus of tiny yawns. The flute has returned, but softer now, less tune, more lull. Somewhere nearby, someone is unfolding a mat with the care of a priest unrolling a sacred scroll. And then it happens. You hear the gentle thump of a sandal against clay, followed by a hush, and then a scroll being unrolled with unmistakable formality. A clerk clears his throat and reads aloud in a tone that suggests this is no ordinary theater announcement. It's a decree, an official one. You lean in, heart mildly racing and belly mildly full, as the scroll is read. By order of the Shogunate's Cultural Harmony Office, and under recommendation of the Office of Restful Conduct, all administrative personnel shall observe a midday stillness between the second and third acts. The crowd doesn't laugh, because this is not a joke. This is the silent siesta decree. And yes, it's real. Issued centuries ago during a time when cultural exchanges between Eastern and Western ritual practices were quietly blooming like overnight jasmine, the shogunate's scribes, who had grown fond of theater festivals and their snack-forward traditions, decided that rest wasn't just personal, it was civic. Thus, the siesta mandate. Thus, the siesta that, of course, it had a much longer name involving harmony, wellness, and the reduction of daytime quarrels over costume changes. But the result was clear. All theater-affiliated workers, scribes, coordinators, and even musicians were required to take a 15-minute nap during festival performances. The logic? A mind rested is a mind less likely to shout at a flute player. It was even enforced. Supervisors were given the power to issue small nap tokens, lacquered wooden discs, that workers had to return only after demonstrating visible signs of sleep. Think soft facial creases, a slightly drooped shoulder, or one of those adorable post-nap blinks that make you look briefly like an owl. Fail to return your nap token? You weren't reprimanded. You were simply handed a larger mat and told to try again. Program was so successful that after just 1 year, the number of mid-performance disputes dropped by 42%, and the chorus reported feeling more emotionally resilient, even during goat-related emergencies. Naturally, some tried to fake it. One over-caffeinated assistant reportedly tried stuffing figs under his eyes to simulate puffiness. He was caught. He was offered tea. He eventually napped. You sit now, watching the quiet ripple of compliance across the theater. Vendors pausing, scribes reclining, even one actor gently leaning against the wing prop shaped like a tree. And for a moment, the whole festival feels like it's breathing. In, out, together. Tomorrow, you'll witness how sleep turned political when a napping official accidentally predicted a divine omen, mid-doze. But tonight, you accept your own silence. Unroll your festival mat, and remember the words carved into the shogunate's decree post. Let not the ink run before the eyes have rested. Close your eyes. Let the torchlight flicker against your lids like a second act you've already dreamed. And let sleep be not your pause, but your participation. The torches burn low now, just a soft glow licking the stone walls like sleepy candlelight. A hush has settled over the amphitheater, heavier than usual. The air feels expectant, like something sacred is about to happen, or already has, quietly, while everyone was dozing. And that's precisely the heart of tonight's next tale. A story whispered from scribe to scribe, chuckled about by chorus interns, and referenced only with raised eyebrows during festival planning meetings. The curious, possibly divine, thoroughly snack-fueled scandal known as When Sleeping Became Political. It starts, like all great political stories, with a nap. More specifically, with a provincial official. Middle-ranking, modestly robed, highly respected for his ability to stay awake through even the driest odes about inheritance law. But not this time. On the third day of the Dionysia, during a particularly long ceremonial performance in honor of Apollo's half-forgotten cousin, the official fell asleep. Not just a nod, a full nap, mid-ritual, robe slightly askew, hands folded, mouth gently open, and here's where it gets complicated, because as he napped, he murmured, softly, clearly, and what he said was, "The harvest shall double, the river shall turn the goat nose." People heard. People took notes. The play continued. But the official's words rippled through the crowd faster than a spilled wine jug on marble. By intermission, the phrase was being repeated in snack lines. By sundown, it was being quoted in fig seller poetry. And the next day, the river did, in fact, shift course. Slightly, but noticeably. Enough for boats to re-anchor. Suddenly, this wasn't just a nap. This was an omen. A dream prophecy. A divine whisper. A snack-induced revelation. He had been seen consuming an entire fig platter before Act 1. Either way, it mattered. The official was immediately summoned, not reprimanded, but questioned. He claimed no memory of the dream. He denied ever having goat-related insight. He asked, quite sincerely, if he was in trouble or being promoted. The answer? Yes. To both. A new category was added to the dream log, sleep prophecy, unintentional. And from that year forward, certain high-ranking officials were gently encouraged to nap during key ceremonies, just in case. They were given more pillows, fewer duties, and one unlucky assistant was assigned the task of dream transcription, sitting nearby, quill in hand, ready to record any nap mutterings that might change city policy. Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. Did it stop anyone? Not at all. Because when Dionysus is your god and figs are your sacrament, and dreams can bend rivers, even your sleep might end up in the minutes of a council meeting. Tomorrow you'll chuckle your way through the absurd but somehow effective tradition of promotions based on nap quality under stress. But tonight, you tuck yourself into your own soft silence, feel the stone at your back, the fig on your breath, and wonder, if you speak in your sleep tonight, will the goat understand? The amphitheater is quieter now, almost reverent, like everyone's afraid to wake the air itself. A lone flute plays something that might be a lullaby, or just a musician too tired to finish the song. The final tragedy has ended, but the night isn't done. Because now comes one of the most whispered about, side-eyed, and sleep-scored traditions in the long, crumb-dusted history of ancient theater administration. Snooze or lose. Office promotions. You've already heard about naps as leadership training. You've witnessed siestas as civic policy. But this was different. This was a competition. It started unofficially, like all great theater myths. A few festival administrators, tired, overfed, and possibly emboldened by a honey wine tasting, bet on which of their junior staff could sleep best during a high-stress scene. The rules: sleep must occur within 10 cubits of the orchestra pit, must begin during an active sword fight or family betrayal, must last through at least one minor character's death monologue, no snoring louder than the chorus. The judging was subjective, of course. Did they look peaceful? Was their posture elegant? Did they wake up gently, like a flower opening at sunrise? Extra points were awarded for waking up with a helpful thought, such as, we should move the fig vendor closer to the east entrance for better traffic flow. The winner? A soft-spoken assistant named Nico, who famously fell asleep during a satyr play featuring 7 actors in donkey masks, dreamed of a better amphitheater layout, and sketched it upon waking. That layout was adopted for the next festival. He was promoted on the spot. From then on, once per festival, the nap assessment panel, a real thing with badges, would invite junior workers to participate in what became known as the sleep trial. It wasn't forced, but it was strongly encouraged. Participants received clean mats, a warm barley roll, and a small wooden token with the words, "Let sleep reveal your strength." Supervisors watched from a shaded platform, sipping diluted wine and murmuring things like, "This one's twitching. He's not ready. Look at her. Composed, breathing like a swan. She's a natural." Some tried to fake it, of course. Staged deep sighs, fake snore pulses. One man even rubbed fig paste under his eyes for dream shadow authenticity. He was caught. He was promoted anyway. For creativity. The tradition continued for decades. And while it eventually faded after someone tried to extend their nap into full hibernation and missed a week of scroll duties, the phrase stuck around. Snooze well, rise well. Tomorrow you'll explore how the anti-coffee movement in Edo took a similar approach, honoring rest over stimulation. But tonight, you settle deeper into your cloak, let your body go heavy, let the sound of sandals on stone become lullaby, and imagine that somewhere, even now, someone is whispering your name and thinking, "She naps like a leader. He dreams like a sage. They're ready for more." You awaken not with a jolt, but with the gentle awareness that someone somewhere is brewing something slightly too fragrant. The scent wafts through the lower aisles, sharp, roasted, almost bitter. Not the warm, wine-soaked sweetness of figs or the sleepy perfume of honey cakes. No, this is something foreign, something alert. You sit up, sniff again, and realize someone's brought coffee to the theater. And just like that, you're in the middle of one of the strangest culture clashes in sleepy festival history, Edo's anti-coffee movement. It begins centuries later and continents away, in the bustling, beautiful twilight of Edo period Japan, where theater culture thrived just as deeply as in Dionysian Athens. There were masks, there were flutes, there were snacks, but most of all, there was rest. Audiences were expected to lean, doze, drift in and out of consciousness during particularly long no performances or 5-act kabuki dramas. This wasn't disrespect. It was etiquette. If you snored gently during Act 2, it meant you were part of the rhythm. But then, coffee arrived. Bitter, exotic, energizing. A wake-up call in a society that had mastered the nap. At first, only scholars and certain elite officials consumed it. Quietly, respectfully. But soon, younger theatergoers, eager to prove their modernity, began sneaking coffee into performances, sometimes brewed with herbs, sometimes mixed with honey, often carried in delicate porcelain flasks that clinked ominously during dramatic pauses. The result? People stopped sleeping. They leaned forward. They commented aloud. One man tried to live narrate a no scene in real time and was shushed so hard he dropped his lacquered thermos. This caused friction. A few theaters instituted silent beverage policies. Others posted signs with poetic warnings. Let not the bean steal the dream. Where eyes stay open, the spirit cannot wander. One kabuki playwright famously rewrote an entire scene around a character who drinks too much coffee and becomes cursed with perpetual alertness. His punishment? He cannot dream. Not even once. Audiences wept, and then dozed off, blissfully. Vendors took sides. Some sold herbal sleep tonics in quiet protest, yuzu, chamomile, roasted barley. Others leaned into the trend, offering coffee for clarity bundles with roasted chestnuts and tiny bean cakes. The war escalated until one quiet morning, a senior actor emerged before the curtain, bowed deeply, and said, "This is not a place for caffeine. This is a place for clouds." The audience cheered. Well, half of them. The others were too wired to sit still. Eventually, the trend faded. The nap prevailed. And coffee? It found its place. In study rooms, in early morning street corners, in whispered conversations about ambition, but not in the sacred space of theater sleep. Tomorrow, you'll watch the curtain begin to fall, exploring the slow, inevitable decline of the nap desk and the rise of modern productivity. But tonight, you inhale deeply, smell the ghost of roasted beans, and feel a quiet triumph in your limbs. Because your mind is cloudy. Your breath is slow, and Dionysus, wherever he is smiling. You did not sip, you did not stir, you stayed drowsy, you stayed true. The final torch is trimmed. The shadows stretch thin and tired across the amphitheater floor. A satyr play just ended with someone falling into a basket of grapes. Half on purpose, half by accident. The crowd laughs, but it's quieter now, smaller. The air carries something else entirely. Bye. You feel it in your spine, that familiar hush that follows something sacred. Not loud, not sharp, but soft, like the slow extinguishing of a candle. Because now you're watching what few dared name aloud, but everyone felt deep in their weary bones. The decline of the sleep office. It didn't happen in one night. There was no decree, no thunderclap, no dramatic monologue where someone shouted, "Awake, ye dreamers," while flipping a lacquered nap desk off a cliff. No, it happened in pauses, in shifts, in progress. As cities grew louder, schedules tighter, and performance culture more polished, stillness began to feel suspicious. People questioned the purpose of the nap mat, the nap token, the dream log. Why sleep when there were scripts to revise? Why dream when there were budgets to finalize? Why let the goat wander the stage if it hadn't been pre-approved? The nap desks became coat racks. The snack carts got streamlined. The festival maps stopped, including quiet zones. And slowly, what had once been central, the shared slowness, the communal drift, the permission to nod off mid-chorus, became a novelty, a luxury, then a myth. One year, the dream log wasn't collected. No one complained. The following year, the priest's snack plate arrived cold. He didn't notice. A new assistant, fresh from an urban training school, asked, "Why is there a bedroll in the office closet?" No one answered. Not because they didn't know, but because it hurt. The old stories lingered, of course. Told by fig vendors with watery eyes and actors who'd once napped through entire festivals with perfect posture. But something had changed. Sleep, once a ritual, had become a relic. You exhale, letting your fingers drift along the grooves in your stone seat, worn down by hundreds of elbows, thousands of dreams. You think of the nap bell, the lacquered desk, the whispering goat, and yet you don't feel sad. Because even as the world shifts toward urgency and updates and caffeinated clarity, something inside you remembers. That stillness is not a flaw. That dreaming is not delay. That some stories only visit you when your eyes are closed. Tomorrow, you'll find yourself back in the present, in a modern world with buzzes and alerts. But you'll also discover how inamuri, the Japanese art of sleeping while present, keeps one foot in this theater of quiet. But tonight, let the curtain lower softly, let the last actor bow, let the quiet take its place on stage. You don't need to hold on, just remember the desk may be gone. But the nap is forever. The torches have burned low to stubs. The laughter has quieted. The satyrs have limped off stage with grape juice stains and grass in their hair. Around you, mats are being rolled up, scrolls tied shut, the night's final crumbs gently brushed away by sandals that move softly, like a final chorus bowing out of frame. But you're still here, still half sitting, half sinking into the memory of lacquered wood and dream-touched air. Because even though the festival fades, the stories don't end. They shift. They echo. They find new shapes in new cities, like shadows cast by different moons. Which brings us here to modern Japan, where a familiar, gentle ritual has survived the noise. It's called inamuri, sleeping while present, dozing without vanishing, resting while remaining part of the world. You've seen it. On trains, heads bobbing softly with the rhythm of the tracks. At desks, arms folded over spreadsheets, faces calm. In cafes, notebooks open, pens uncapped, breath slow. These aren't people failing to stay awake. They are people so deeply woven into their roles, their duties, their spaces, that even sleep doesn't remove them. Inamuri isn't absence. It's trust. A nap not stolen, but offered. Not weakness, but poise. The ancient nap desk has become the armrest on a subway. The dream log now floats in digital clouds. The priest's snack plate has turned into a convenience store bento eaten quietly between meetings with reverence. And the dream bell? Maybe it's your phone on silent. Maybe it's the moment your eyelids drift at your desk and no one interrupts, because something survived the centuries. The belief that sleep is not an escape. It's a contribution. That closing your eyes doesn't mean you've checked out. It means you trust the stage enough to rest in its glow. You think about the theater now, the old one, the dirt stone benches, the fig sellers and the goat and the drifting smell of wine and barley. It never really left. It just changed costumes. Tomorrow, you'll return to that theater one last time. You'll lie down on the tatami mat where it all began, head resting in the crook of your arm, and drift into the final sleep of this story. But tonight, you feel the train rock beneath you, the city hum outside your window. The quiet approval of a culture that says you may nap here and you still belong. So go ahead, doze. This world too knows how to hold a dream. The world is quiet now. The festival has ended, not with fanfare, but with a long shared exhale, like the whole amphitheater breathed out and forgot to breathe back in. The torches are gone. The vendors have packed their carts. Even the goat, somehow, has vanished into the dusk without a trace. And you're back where it all began. Lying on a woven tatami mat, your head resting gently on the crook of your arm. The same way clerks did in Edo, the same way scribes did in Athens, the same way someone like you, someone tired, curious, wide-eyed, and snack-filled might always have. The mat is warm from the day, the stars blink softly overhead. Somewhere in the distance, someone hums a half-remembered choral line, already fading into memory. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole self. You can still feel the nap desk beneath your cheek. You can still smell the figs in the folds of your robe. You can still hear the wine bell and the shuffle of sandals and the whisper of stories being passed like sesame seeds from one hand to another. You can even remember your last dream. There was a mask, a honey cake, and a soft, goat-shaped cloud. No one clapped. But maybe that was the point. Not everything ends with applause. Some things end in silence, in warmth, in a long, slow blink toward sleep. As you lie there, the mat beneath you sighs with the weight of 1,000 naps that came before. Your body sinks, your breath evens, and the story, the one that carried you across centuries and crumbs, grows quieter. Not gone. Just sleeping. So close your eyes now. Let the stars wrap around your shoulders. Let your thoughts scatter like olive pits into the dust. And if you dream tonight of festivals and figs and forgotten gods, just know you were always part of the play. Even when you slept through it. End of script. Sweet dreams.